Hey everybody, this is Chris. I'm here in my own backyard. I'm trying to model some pruning cuts and approach for you. So I'm here with a young pear tree, 4-year-old pear, doing some summer pruning. Remember, the basics of summer pruning are that you're trying to reduce the vigor of that tree and encourage fruit ripening, fruit growth. So we know that with pears, they fruit on spurs that are at least 2 years old. And so we're trying to maintain those spurs that exist, plan for the future for some new ones, and deal with any water sprouts, right? Any other growth that's coming up. We follow the 3 Ds, first of all: dead, damaged, dying, diseased. 4, you can see dead and damaged together, or dead and dying together, excuse me. And then sometimes we also count disoriented as a D, going in the wrong direction. So you can see right here, this pear tree, it's following the typical pear in that it wants to grow straight up and down, right? Not a lot of going out to the side. So we use pruning and or training, which would be tying down to get a better branch angle here. We might put some spreaders in the middle, just a piece of wood basically that holds these apart to get some better angle here. Right? And we're trying to maintain our open center in the middle. You can see initially when I started here, about 2 feet up, I made the first cut, split this thing into its initial vase shape. And since then, this shoot had a poor branch angle and it started coming back toward the center. So this whole thing, you could put some weight on here and pull this one out to the side. You want to make sure then that this stake is there to counteract that effort too. This is a super dwarf rootstock, and so it's not going to get a whole lot bigger, and it does need to be staked for some solidity for keeping it upright in the wind. And you can see down here also, this is your graft union right here, and I'm just about 5 inches off the soil surface. Some signs of disease here down on the beginning of this scion, but we're gonna give it a go. So first things first, if you're working with more than one tree, or you don't know where your hand pruner has been, you want to start right with the sanitizing spray. Your typical tool here for something this size will be the hand pruner. This can cut almost everything up to 1 inch in diameter, which is going to be all we need for this tree. But in the future, if you have larger material, we've got loppers, right? It's basically a giant hand pruner. And for even larger material, the pruning saw. And that one is for making big cuts. In a couple of videos, I'm going to look at how to do this on some bigger pieces of material coming up. Stay tuned for that one. For now though, we're going to work primarily with the hand pruner. And first off, I want to make the distinction between pruning for heading cuts and thinning cuts. So remember, summertime, summer pruning, we're looking at reducing the vigor. And so here that means we want to make some thinning cuts, removing whole branches, right, which is going to result in, that branch is gone, so less vigor there, right? All that energy is going to go away, and instead, in the future, that energy is going to go into ripening the fruit that exists or putting new leaf growth onto branches that already exist. Whereas in the winter time, that same cut would lead to new spring growth from the base of that cut. So right here, for example, we've got 3 branches in the same exact spot. We don't need those. So I'm going to come right in here at the base of this second one and remove it. That's a thinning cut all the way back here and at a little bit of an angle right to the outside of that branch bark ridge, also called the collar. You don't want to cut into that, but just right up to it and parallel with it. So when you're thinking about what to do here, right, come from another view, it's helpful to go all the way around the tree, see what's happening, and you think about, you want to maintain the shape, you want to remove those 3 or 4 Ds, depending how you think about it, and you want to remove no more than about 30% of the top growth. So on this very small tree, 30% is not a whole lot. But recall that 30% does not include the dead, damaged, diseased, dying wood, right? So right here at the tips, you can see this, right? Some clear signs of disease. There's mold on there. There's some aphids on the back, right? So that one, if we just remove that diseased part to an outward facing bud, I might go down here, remove that. Again, close in here, you can see this at an angle, right to an outward facing leaf, so that when this heading cut, right, does force new growth at the node here and the node here immediately below the cut, it's going to have a branch coming out this way and coming out this way at me, keeping my center open. So I've got a few instances where this is the case. Now I'm here on the shadier side of the tree, and even though there's a little bit of disease at the top, I'm actually going to thin this out entirely. Let me show you down here. So I was going to take this whole branch out, but there's a nub here from a previous heading cut that I made, where then, remember, the nodes immediately below it produced new growth, and I'm just going to remove that whole piece so that I maintain this one and this little guy pointing toward the inside. So next year, this is this year's growth, all this stuff here, down to this spot here, that little collar area where it looks like some tight grained wood. That is the end of the growth for the year. So year 2, second year wood is down here until this spot where that same ridge occurs. So that means next year I'm going to expect to see spurs forming on this 2-year-old wood, and you can see it's starting to happen already here, right? That's going to be some fruit coming up next year, whereas this one, tight against the branch, is going to be a leaf. So here's an even tighter example. This was growth from this year, 1-year-old wood. Here to here, maybe about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, was last year. Same thing, another 2 inches. That was 3rd year. And on down back to here was year 4. So that was all from the first one. Let's take a look at a few more cuts in here. Again, pear, very upright, and we need to deal with that. These upright shoots are sometimes called water sprouts. Generally, water sprouts do not have any fruiting wood. So when we're thinking about having fruit to eat later, they're not so helpful to us. And so we think about thinning them out for the most part. So I might do that. Find this similar, very upright one here. Thin that. Come down in the center now. I've got this upright one. It's diseasey at the top. Many of these tips seem to be showing signs of disease, right? As we talk about our disease ID, our disease management over the next few weeks, we'll get a better picture of what those things actually are. But for now, we just want to pay attention to what's going on. So I'm dealing with these upright shoots. Another thing you could do again is you could tie one down so you get a better crotch angle here, something, you know, in the 45 to 60 degree range. These two are taking up more or less the same spot. They don't have disease on the tips yet, which is nice. So I'm just gonna come in and remove one of those two that's redundant. Same thing over here. I've got a nice outward facing short branch, and this guy just going straight up. But here, this is the outside of the tree, so I think it's useful in the future to have some sort of branch sticking out this way to encourage some bushiness rather than that upright vertical effect. So I'm going to prune to an outward facing bud here, making that a heading cut, and next year this branch will come out here into some light that hasn't yet been taken advantage of. We're here, this guy. I'm going to come back later. I don't have the materials for tying down with me, but I would like to tie this one down and get that angle out here like that, right, for the future without removing anything. The more you remove, of course, the longer it's going to take to get fruit off of a branch in that space. If I remove that whole thing now, then my fruit is going to appear on spurs down here in the second and third year growth instead of on the one that I just cut away. So this guy is sticking out far from the bottom here. You can see this branch is not at all strong. If this has 2 or 3 pairs on it, it's going to be going way down like that, running the chance of snapping. So this is not a good, healthy branch. You can see that the branch angle here is almost 180 degrees. We'd rather see something up there, excuse me, that'd be 90 degrees. Almost something up there more in the 60-degree range. So I'm actually gonna take that whole thing out again, right back to that branch bark region. And if you ever do that and you're like, that's not a clean cut, right? Just come in a second time and clean her up. So again, I'm trying to deal with that upright growth here. I've got diseasey leaves on the top. So this one's coming out all together. Here, I would like to do a tie down again and spread that out. There's some disease here. So in the meantime, I'm gonna head back to there and let that one move outward. And then as I tie down, right, it's going to be wider.